Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk About Communication this Friday morning. Apologies for being late if you were waiting for me to come on. I had a couple of technical issues with Zoom just not loading, and also my washing machine was going and it was sounding like a small plane was landing. So I didn't think you probably wanted to hear that. So, wishing everybody a good Friday if you're watching today live here in Australia. And this morning, I wanted to talk with you about talking with your children about their emotions. So, one of the things when we talk about children's emotions, I think it's really important from the beginning to be thinking, are you comfortable talking about emotions first and foremost? So I think you need to be comfortable with your own emotions. I think that really, really helps. And not just thinking about how you're going to approach talking about your kids' emotions or with your children when they are actually emotional. So think about how comfortable you are talking about your own emotions. How easily does that happen for you? Is that a conversation you can have? Do you have that with people in your life? Because I think, if we're asking our kids to be exploring emotions, we have to be quite comfortable with that topic to begin with. The other thing to be thinking about when we're talking about kids' emotions and helping them with their emotions is thinking about, are there any emotions that your child experiences that you observe in them that make you uncomfortable? And when I mean uncomfortable, I mean, does something seem to trigger certain emotions in yourself when your child is emotional? So if they're expressing sadness or anger or frustration or feelings of left outedness, does that seem to trigger strong or intense emotions in you? And that might not always happen. It might not always be consistent. Again, we're humans, we're more likely to be emotional when we're tired, when we're overwhelmed, when our needs aren't being met in some other way. So, but generally speaking, if you've noticed that there are certain emotions that trigger you or have quite a strong reaction from you, that's a really useful kind of marker or kind of indicator that there might be some beliefs going on for you around those particular emotions, maybe related to how you were parented, or maybe what you experienced or what you observed in your own parenting, own experience of being parented as a child. We often bring that information with us, and sometimes we don't know that it's there until after we become parents ourselves, and that gets brought out just with our kids' behaviour. So just having a little moment to reflect on whether that is something that you've noticed within yourself. Most of us have, everyone's got unique experiences of being parented, and our parents, again, they didn't have a book on how to parent. Different time periods had more certain styles, and particularly more certain rules, I suppose, or impressions around how emotions were expressed or not expressed or not talked about. So we know that, mental health and talking about emotional health is not something that it was as commonly talked about 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. So in terms of the expectations about how emotions were expressed, whether they were talked about or not talked about, is quite different over a relatively short period of time. And of course, there's different lives that have been lived in there, and we kind of bring some of that through with us through our generations in terms of what we learn and what we hear, and then how we synthesize that to become parents in this current day. So it's sort of really interesting how that history unfolds. And then as we are now parenting a new generation of young people, there are different pressures, there are different expectations, but there's also different knowledge as well around what we know develops emotionally resilient and highly emotionally intelligent people. We know that having an understanding about emotions and learning emotion regulation skills, but being able to emotion regulate with other people and on our own is really, really important lifelong skill. And it's a very protective factor that we can help develop in our own kids. So we know it's important and we want to know how we can do that more. So thinking about your own history of being parented, thinking about how that may come out when you're parenting your own children. So the next thing is, if you're aware of your own emotions, if you're relatively comfortable with them, the first thing to do is, if you're wanting to have more conversations with your children around emotions, is noticing that there's going to be times when your children are calm and conversations around emotions are going to be easier. And then there's going to be the skill of supporting them and co-regulating with them when their emotions are more aroused, meaning they're feeling more intense in their emotions. So in terms of being able to have conversations about emotions in both of those circumstances, introducing emotions in an easy, friendly way through books, through kids' TV programs, through pictures, through light conversations about what you notice about emotions is a really nice way to do that. Obviously, for older children, if you're kind of wanting to start some of this now, it's less easy to kind of do that in a untargeted kind of way. I suppose if one of the reasons you're concerned is that your child has quite extreme emotions and now they're moving into adolescence, or maybe they're already in the teen years, giving them a book about emotions or watching cartoons with them may not be the way that's going to really resonate because of their age. So that's going to be a little different than if you have really young children and you can kind of just really introduce a lot of young kids programs, especially Bluey has lots of examples of different scenarios and day-to-day life, and kind of you can watch that with them and have conversations with them around the different emotions. There's lots of children's books that explores specific emotions, but even most kids' books have some sort of event happening that creates some sort of emotion in the characters, whether the child kind of characters or the parent characters, that you can have conversations about and notice facial expressions and notice what might be happening in their body and things like that. So you can start some of those conversations that aren't so directed towards the actual child, rather, so they're not saying, what are you feeling? And are you feeling this? And are you feeling that? Or show me a happy, show me a sad. So rather than have it so directed, have something kind of that you can both look at and both talk about. It's a lot less threatening. That is also the same for older children and teenagers. So if you're trying to introduce conversations around that, it might be better to be thinking about having conversations with your child around your teenager's friends, or around a TV show that you might both want to watch together, and having conversations, around the emotions you see with the characters on those shows, rather than stepping straight into conversations about their emotions, if you think that's going to be a bit more difficult and a bit too threatening. So just starting with that kind of exposure and starting with how can we have conversations around what emotions are, and beginning to notice them in a more neutral kind of way. So that's normally when they're feeling calm. You might kind of just, again, make conversation around it. And be always thinking, and I think I mentioned this in my previous videos, what is your goal around wanting to talk to your kids around emotions? Is it to be in like that teaching mode? You want to teach them about emotions? Or is it about feeling like you're closer with them and that you're supporting them when they become emotional? Because they're kind of different goals. So again, to do teaching and to give instruction, or to be kind of problem solving, we need to have really calm brains to do that. And that's quite different when our child is upset, or they're anxious, or they're frustrated. Their brains are not calm in that state. And so the thinking part of the brain is going to be really difficult to access. So there's quite different goals when we think about teaching mode versus supporting mode. And usually in the supporting mode, our role is to be helping them either co-regulate, which means they might be having difficulty regulating their emotions. If we can be calm and well regulated, then we can share some of our calmness with them and help them regulate in that moment. Over time, of course, we want to transfer that skill so that they'll be able to do that regulation when they're, late childhood, maybe teenagers and adults. But when they're not there yet, when they're having real difficulty, when we see those intense emotions, our goal to be teaching in that moment is going to be really ineffective. But our goal to be supporting them and to be close to them, to be sharing some of our calm with them, to help them get calm and help them ride through those really intense emotions, that's going to bring you closer. And it's also going to meet that goal of having eventually an emotionally intelligent young person, because that's a process over time, and it's a relationship building activity where they feel safe and they feel contained when parents come in and do that, which allows them to calm, which allows them to sort of build those pathways, and then eventually they can do some more independent self-regulation skills when they feel that space. So be thinking about those things as well. Like I said, when emotions are super strong, it's we're going to need to be able to step in and help do some of that co-regulation with them, because most kids will not have that. Certainly in preschool years, early primary school years, lots of the time kids may or may not be have got those cognitive skills to do the self-regulation, like the strategies kind of thing. So remembering to do the breathing or remembering other things that perhaps has been talked about, doing them in those intense emotions usually means a support of an adult to be able to step around them and help share a bit of our calmness with them, to help them ride through those difficult times. Now, one of the things that if you're wanting to do some co-regulation, a really helpful idea is to be thinking smaller emotions are easier to help them manage than those really big, intense emotions. We also know that for lots of our neurodivergent kids and teens, they may be missing those early signs, whether it's to do with alexithymia difficulties. And alexithymia is a difficulty being able to label emotions within themselves and sometimes within others as well. So sometimes there's that extra specific challenge that they have. And also they may have interoception differences as well. So interoceptions is awareness, or interoception awareness is about knowing and detecting the signals within the body. So things like heart rate, hunger, thirst, stomach sensations. So all the sensations that come from within the body system, that awareness is part of our emotional awareness as well, because emotions have a physiological or physical component. So if there's specific difficulties with alexithymia and interoception, detecting small level of emotion is going to be really tricky. And I think for those families that experience kids who seem to go from 0 to 100, they really don't know that they're a little bit angry or a little bit upset. It's kind of like, it seems like they're calm and then they're just like 100. And for parents to observe that as well and go, it's really hard to find that medium kind of amount of emotion to be able to step in and give some support. It could be that those two things are going on, so that detection is really, really difficult to kind of see and experience. And certainly for some children, parents have maybe more clue, or they see some clues happening that the children may not be kind of putting together as feeling uncomfortable yet. So part of our jobs as parents, especially of kids who may experience emotions and differences like that, is really being quite tuned in to behavior or to indicators that perhaps they're moving from a calm kind of regulated state to a dysregulated state. So their behavior might become louder, become jerkier. They may just be kind of moving faster, rapid, their volume may go up, and they may really be showing signs that they're not okay. Excuse that noise if you can hear that. Like I said, my washing machine sounds like a plane taking off. So one of the things is when you see that, it's taking that opportunity to come closer and to maybe either use language if that's appropriate for your child, and using things like just your observations. You seem like, you sound like, I noticed you are looking a little stressed, or things like that. Some kids don't react well to that. And so sometimes using language in those circumstances, it may not be needed and may just be coming nice and close, and doing something that your child's likely to feel calming for them, and maybe sort of saying, can you need a little bit of help right now, or I'm noticing you seem a bit sad, or I'm noticing you seem a bit stressed, and it's that real softness of tone, I think, because sometimes kids can get very defensive when parents come in and say, you look a little bit angry, and it can sort of almost feel like an accusation rather than an invitation or a way of saying, I'm here to help you. I can see you're struggling, and what do you need? So it's seeing that, it's noticing it when it's smaller rather than waiting for it to sort of resolve itself if you know your child. And we often know that it's so much easier to go in and give that support and help them kind of work through some of those emotions while they're not completely dysregulated. Once they've hit that flip the lid moment, the fight and flight reflex is in, and it takes quite some time before we're going to get calmness and any opportunity to talk about maybe what happened and problem solve and things like that. So it's really having lots of those little opportunities to recognize that their emotions may be kind of coming up, and seeing if we can come in close and give them some support, and then we can move away once they're calm, and things like that. The other thing is, it doesn't have to just be, especially if we want to be exploring emotions and talking about emotions with our kids and talking about those more challenging emotions like anxiety and like anger, thinking about happy emotions or more pleasant emotions, we can have conversations about that as well. So really exploring, what is it like when we're calm? What does your body feel like? What kind of things do that? So you can kind of do activities around getting really comfortable talking about those more pleasant emotions, because that's really, really useful as well. We want to be exploring their vocab around all kinds of emotions, not just the challenging emotions as well. Silly emotions, weird emotions, emotions with weird letters or weird faces attached to them maybe, or exploring different kinds of things that make them feel different things, or even different body sensations as well. What does their body feel like when they're so happy? What does their body feel like when they're feeling silly? So all kinds of playful ways of going in, especially if we know that talking about those more uncomfortable emotions is going to be perceived as a threat in any way. So going in on those more easy, less uncomfortable emotions for a start, I think would be a really good place to go if you know that there's some really challenging emotions that you really want to help your child manage with. So that's just a few of my ideas if you're wanting to talk to your child about emotions. So it's getting comfortable with your own emotions, being aware of any of our parenting templates that perhaps may be triggered by our children's emotions, noticing whether you're going in a teaching mode versus a supporting mode, because they're two quite different things. And then if we're going in for a supporting mode, know that for quite some time, particularly if your child is neurodivergent or has some differences in terms of their chronological age versus their actual age or the developmental age, then knowing that setting our expectations where they're at. So if they're having challenges, it shows they're not ready to do self-regulation, not ready to put in strategies and skills that perhaps they should have, whatever should means, perhaps their peers might have, But if they don't have that yet, it just means we need to go in and give them more support so they can feel safe, so they can have more experience of doing that regulation with the support of a caring adult who really wants that for them. And then, like I said, if having conversations about those trickier emotions is just too much yet, begin some conversations, begin noticing when they're happy, begin noticing when they're calm, begin noticing when they're doing their favorite thing. And that is an okay place to start having conversations about emotions. So I hope that has been useful. If you've got any questions, I'm just going to check to see if there are any questions. If you're on with me live, I'm just trying to have a look. I can't see whether anyone's with me at the moment or not. Wait, just going to check the comments. Oh, there we go. There are some comments. I love it. My daughter's jumped on and putting comments in there for me. How nice is that? So, but if you've got any questions, Fred, please put it in later on. You can do #replay, and certainly I will do my best to answer those for you. I'll also be putting this up on my YouTube channel as well. So if you've got questions, or if you want to go watch any of my other videos, please go and do that. The other thing I just wanted to say before I finish this morning is that in May, I'm going to be doing my group for parents who may have not long ago had a diagnosis or identification for their child or teenager in the family. My group is called Glimmer, excuse me, and it usually runs for about 4 weeks, and we go through unpacking and sharing some useful information about just responding to what it's like, understanding a diagnosis, where to from here, connecting with other parents who may have been on this journey to get a diagnosis, and just creating a bit of a supportive community at this early stage. So I'm just going to pop a link to that if you're interested, or you know somebody who might be needing some support at this early stage of understanding their child's neurodivergence and autism diagnosis. So I'm going to leave that there this morning, and I wish everybody a really happy Easter weekend, and I will catch you next Friday morning for our last Let's Talk About Communication session for this April. Talk to you very soon. Take care.